Welcome to Afya Fix. Thank you for always joining us week after week to learn lifestyle medicine education that you can easily apply at home and even in your community. I'm your host, Gladys Ombongi, and with me is Dr. Eddie Ramirez. Dr. Eddie Ramirez comes to us from Pennsylvania, where he is the Health Ministry's director, and he is an author, a researcher, and a lifestyle medicine doctor, and of course, an international speaker. That's how come we have him here, and we're delighted to have him. I also have a live audience with me, and I'm so happy they found time to be here to engage with us. Karibuni sana. In today's topic, we are going to learn how to decrease risks of diabetes using diet. And we would go deeper and try to unpack this, which is a very common disease now. And you know, non-communicable diseases are very common in this country. In fact, they're among those leading, about 50% of the deaths in the hospitals can be accounted or directly related to non-communicable diseases. So doctor, tell us, where do we start when it comes to diabetes management, especially in relation to diet?
Yes, the issue with diabetes is that by definition, somebody that is diabetic is somebody that has heart problems. So they need to be extra careful because they have a very high risk of dying either of a heart attack or a stroke. And this is difficult, you know, because when you don't have symptoms of the heart, you may think that, oh, everything is fine, you know, it doesn't matter what I eat or whatever. I've seen some people that the doctor prescribes them, you know, 2 medications a day, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to take one so I can save money.
Yes,
or I'm going to take it every other day, or things like this. You know, do not do those things. So there was a very interesting study on JAMA. JAMA is the Journal of the American Medical Association, one of the top journals regarding medicine. And they did a very interesting study. They started to find out other studies that have been published about diabetes risk in order to understand, you know, what things were increasing the risk of cardiovascular disease and what things were decreasing. Because contrary to popular belief, some people say, oh, everything is bad. No, everything is not bad. You know, there's things that are bad, there's things that are good. And we need to decrease those that are bad and increase those that are good. So among the things that were decreasing the risk for cardiovascular problems, number one was nuts. Nuts have the ability to decrease your cholesterol, just as the medication that decreases cholesterol, the same amount of effect can have if you add nuts to your diet. Don't use the nuts that is fried and things like this. If not, you know, it's contra. You're going to get the opposite effect. Also, number two was beverages containing sugar. You know, so all that, you know, colas and, you know, the sweetened sugary type of drinks. Then whole grains. Whole grains have been documented to decrease risk. And finally, fruits and vegetables. Those were the ones that were decreasing the risk. Among those that were increasing the risk was what is called the processed meats. You know, you have your weenies and bologna and this type of things, you know, salami and so forth. This is not the best things. They also increase risk of cancer. Number two, sodium in the diet. Sodium in the diet, excess, you know, can be problematic. And number three is red meat. No question about it. That has been very well documented how it increases your risk for cardiovascular problems. And if you have diabetes, it's even much more the risk. 43% of the people with diabetes will end up with some sort of cardiovascular problem.
Wow, that is quite something to think about. Then I'm thinking, this is what we already know about the foods. There is a study that was done, the Adventist Health Study. What did it have to say, especially when you compare the Adventist people, their lifestyle, and those who do not borrow from this kind of a life?
That's right. They had some very interesting data that came out of that. For those that are not familiar, it has been a long study, more than 100,000 people that have been included in that. In fact, I'm actually involved a little bit. We're going to be publishing some data, some study from that data. And what they did, they show that Adventists have 40% less risk of dying of heart and stroke problems. You know, that's a huge decrease if you put it into perspective. In fact, they even published a paper that is called 10 years of life because it increases your lifespan. And some people say, oh, doctor, but I don't want to live too long. Well, you don't want to live too long if you are unhealthy, you know. Then, you have problems moving, you have problems thinking, and so forth. But if you have good health, it's fantastic to have a long life because you can enjoy that life to the fullest. And, among Adventists, something very interesting is that we have different diets even among the Adventists. So we can correlate things to see, which diet triggers the most health, which diet triggers the most health problems. So basically, you can divide the Adventists, and they related this to their body mass and to their diabetes risk. And we can see that in the screen as Adventist Health Study 2. So you have, for example, the non-vegetarians. Those tend to have, on average, a body mass index of 28.8. That's too much. That's going to give you a higher risk. And that's why among those non-vegetarians, 7.6% of them have diabetes. So you see the higher risk. And then you have what are called the semi-vegetarians. They're pretty much vegetarians, but once in a while they're eating, some meat and chicken and so forth. Those have a body mass index of 27.3. Again, too much, And diabetes risk, 6% of them had diabetes. And then you have the pesco vegetarians. Those are the ones that are vegetarians but eat fish. They still have problems with their weight. 26.3 is their average body mass index, still high. Risk of diabetes, 4.8. And then you have the lacto-ovo-vegetarians. Those are the ones that are vegetarians but eat eggs and cheese and milk. Those have a body mass index of 26.7, still too high. And diabetes risk in that group is 3.3. And finally, the group among the Adventists that have the least problems with their weight, those are the full vegetarians. Those have a body mass index on average of 23.6, which is ideal. If you are listening to me and you are in Africa, you're from African origin, your goal for body mass index should be 23 or less. Right on the money, exactly where we want it. And diabetes risk of that, only 2%. Notice the difference between 2% and almost 8%. So you're talking about, almost 3 times more the risk of diabetes with the other diet.
That's huge. That's
Yes?
really big. And I'm thinking, if I choose to transition and change my diet from being a non-vegetarian to a vegetarian, what changes do I expect and how long should this happen? Because it's nice, 3 times the risk of not dying. Who doesn't want that?
Well, here comes the good news. The body has a tremendous ability for regeneration. And in a published study, it was shown that in 14 weeks, you can expect to lose about 6 kilograms. And it's not only the scale, because the scale can be a little bit tricky,
Yes,
but actually when measure how much waste you lost, people lost 5 centimeters. That's a lot of that's a lot of fat that you are losing secondary to that.
Wow. And I'm thinking of this person who has, the fat that you're talking about. There's the visceral fat,
That's
the
right.
hidden fat. Because most of the time you see someone is flat and they're thinking, I'm good.
That's right.
But it's not always that way. Please talk about that as well.
Yeah, visceral fat is the fat that will actually make you a diabetic. There's a correlation. If you have too much, and visceral comes from the, from the Latin, the viscera, which means the internal organs. So it's the fat that accumulates around your internal organs. You can see the graphic on the screen, visceral fat distribution. And please notice how somebody normal, see that white thing around, this is a special study in which we're seeing the middle of the abdomen. Notice it does have some fat, you do need some fat there, but notice the person that is diabetic, the tremendous excess of visceral fat. That is not good. And whenever we're talking about a therapy for the diabetic, we need to focus at decreasing that visceral fat.
You know why I am interested in that particular aspect? Because here in Africa, we of course like to look good and happy. And good and happy is having some good weight around the waist. Because otherwise we will think you're very poor. But if that fat keeps going up, what dangers, what risks does it pose?
That's right. So yeah, I mean, the happy one is going to be the doctor, because you're going to have to pay him a lot of money, I can tell you. He's going to smile very big.
Yes.
And one of the challenges is what is called inflammation. And when inflammation takes place in the body starts self-destroying itself. Your brain starts to lose the connections between one cell and another one, increasing your risk for Alzheimer's disease. Your heart arteries start to clog in, increasing your risk of a heart attack. The arteries that go to your neck start to clog in, also increasing the risk for a stroke. Your kidneys start suffering, your bones start to deform, and that's what gives you, those osteoarthritis and these type of things that when you're moving, in your 50s, 60s, it's all painful. That's secondary to inflammation. That's secondary to having that excess body weight. So be careful, not because the society is clapping to you, that may not necessarily be better for your health, because you're actually decreasing your lifespan and you're actually increasing disease and decreasing the quality of your life.
And so if I switched and I'm plant-based now, so I've moved from my maybe whatever lacto-ovo or whatever kind of lifestyle I had, and now I go into a plant-based.
That's right.
Would that have some effect on the visceral fats? View at home, we're saying visceral, the hidden fats, because many people like to think I'm slim, therefore I'm okay. Not true. Until you are actually, we've taken the measurements, we can't quite tell it. So
that's right. No, yeah, it's very true. And you can see the following published study, different types of fat and diabetes. And it was very clear shown that depending on the type of diet that you are following, you are either going to encourage that visceral fat or you're actually going to decrease it. So you can see how the vegetarian having 70% of fat, that's the ideal regarding diabetes risk. And a friend of mine, Dr. Kale Oba, she's in Washington, D.C., not too far from where I live. She published a paper, very interesting paper. You can see it on the screen, Weight and Visceral Fat. In that study, it was shown that the people following that full plant-based diet in a matter of 12 weeks was able to lose 6.4 kilos. But the most fascinating finding was that the decrease of that visceral fat started to occur within 12 weeks. I mean, that 12 weeks is actually not that long. So if there's a diabetic that is listening to me, I would encourage you, try it. Look at what's going to happen to you. And not only you're going to see it at the level of your visceral fat, you're going to see it when they check your fasting glucose, when they check that hemoglobin A1C. You will see how those markers start to come down when you follow that diet. In fact, if you're going to follow that diet, you better be in close contact with your doctor, because most probably either they're going to have to decrease your diabetes medication, or many times they're going to have to drop it secondary, that you're not going to need it anymore.
That's good news.
Yes.
That's really good news. And is there a relationship between insulin resistance and diabetes? Have you done any studies that reflect these two factors?
Yeah, we did a study, came out on the journal Atherosclerosis, Thrombosis, and Vascular Biology, which happens to be a journal of the American Heart Association. And this study was pretty nice, almost 2,000 people. And what we did, they were trying the whole food plant-based diet in a matter of 18 days. And we were following them, every day, taking measurements of their fasting glucose. And we show that in a matter of 18 days, the fasting glucose started coming down to the point that the majority of those 2,000 patients, we had to decrease their medication, and many of them, we actually had to eliminate the medication. So it was a combination of the plant-based diet and intense exercise. In that program, our patients are walking 3 times a day. So you have this very intense exercise, secondary to the whole food plant-based diet, together with the drinking water, the spiritual factor, and the whole package, and you get fantastic results. Not the only one. There was a second one that came out in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. They were interested in postmenopausal health of ladies. And what we did in this study, we selected the ladies that have gone through menopause. And what happened is that sometimes a lady can be healthy and then suddenly menopause comes and then it starts getting a little bit out of control regarding different health markers. So we were demonstrating that even those ladies that have high risk of metabolic problems, as we put them in that 18-day intervention, their cholesterol came down, their fasting glucose came down, their blood pressure came down. I mean, all these markers started responding beautifully, and that shows you, if you want to be a healthy person, especially if you're going through the process of menopause, that's one of the best things that you can do for your health. And in parentheses, you can find that research, you can see it on the screen, Dr. Eddie Ramirez. Just Google Francisco Ramirez ResearchGate, and that'll take you to that research, as well as that Twitter account, EddieRDMD. I put all my new research there if you want to follow it.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm thinking of something else. If I have a diet that is rich in fiber and I take it regularly, would this help, or does it have any impact, or does it really matter, or I can just enjoy my food?
I was actually talking to somebody yesterday, and this person was telling me her story. And that person grew up healthy, but the problem was that, when she left home, she started compromising and started eating the wrong types of diets, to the point that he ended up having, a morbid type of obesity. She was very, very overweight. And she tried diet A. It worked while she did it, and then she came back to normal. She tried normal diet B, C, D. It worked while you're doing the diet, but then once you stop it, you go back. So what she discovered was a program based on high fiber intake. Her goal was 50 grams of fiber a day, together with drinking 1 gallon of water, both combined. And fiber has a fabulous effect on our body. Fiber makes us satisfied, so we don't overeat. Fiber provides bulk, so you're able to, go to the restroom, much easier. And, if you have the temptation of eating the wrong types of diet, one of the best things you can do is to eat that high fiber diet. So 3/4 of your plate should be those high fiber foods, such as your legumes, such as salads, such as raw vegetables, or, slightly cooked and so forth. So then you fill up, and then you don't have space for the unhealthy things. And sure enough, she lost weight to the point that today she has a normal body mass index. Impressive, how beautiful fiber can help you regain back your health.
So you don't have to eat all the wrong stuff.
Yes.
But what about in the digestive tract? You know, not everybody is able to digest fiber, maybe. Is that a problem?
That's a good question, and it's true. See, I've seen people that claim that they cannot eat beans or legumes because they have so much discomfort and so forth. See, the problem is not the legume. The problem is that you have been eating the wrong types of food to the point that your digestive tract bacteria doesn't know how to handle this. And whenever you introduce these foods, man, is a disorder in your abdomen. So what we have found out is that you can hurt your digestive tract. And by eating, you know, the animal products and all this fat and so forth, you hurt the digestive tract. There's a space that should be closed between one cell and another cell in your digestive tract, and it starts to open up and things start coming in there. You think that's good? No, it's not good. And you create inflammation, and the absorption of the nutrients doesn't take place, and it's just a vicious cycle, which is going to end up giving you, you know, problems with your weight, diabetes, heart disease, and so forth. So we need to heal that gut as part of that treatment, and that's what that high fibers foods does. It helps us, you know, regenerate that digestive tract.
So it's not true that we cannot eat high fiber food.
Yeah.
We can try, and actually it's because of abuse of our gut that it actually complains. So yes, at home you can eat many foods that you have had many people complain about. So before you go away, we will be coming back with more, so just stay put and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Before we went on a break, we were learning the various aspects of diabetes and the risks of some of the foods that can increase or decrease diabetes. Maybe one last question before we go to our live audience here, Dr. What about the different kinds of fats that we have in the market? You know, people eat different, all manner of things. Do you want to just say something about it?
Yeah. There's a very interesting study that was published, and we can actually see it on the screen. And they were trying to find out what types of food increase your risk of diabetes. So vegetarians, you know, full vegetarians and just eating, you know, plant oils, 17% of them only, okay, don't need too much. Those had the zero risk. And then if somebody is eating too much fat, you're eating hamburgers and all these things, 46% of your calories are fat, that increases your risk by 40%. If you're eating foods that are called the trans fats, these are the ones that are found in many of the cookies. These are the foods that are found in this fried bread that sadly many Kenyans eat every day. Okay,
it, yeah.
Just eating 3% of all your fat calories out of those trans fats increases your risk of diabetes by 44%. Not the best thing. Or eating more than 270 milligrams of cholesterol a day, that increases your risk for diabetes by 60%. Just for the record, one egg contains about 220 milligrams of cholesterol. So think about it. That's 220. We said 270. So you eat that and then a piece of chicken and then a piece of meat. Man, you have your 270 milligrams a day, you know, and you're in big trouble. And finally, animal fat. Eating animal fat as your main source, you know, for example, using things like ghee, you know, using things like pig's fat, lard, you know, that increases the risk of diabetes by 64%. So that's why I tell the diabetic, you know, even though sugar is not the best thing, fat is actually your number one enemy regarding making your diabetes worse, and number two, making you a diabetic in the first place.
So it is really fat that is the highest risk. I mean, it's usually something most of the time we hear people say, "Oh, I don't take sugar, I'm diabetic."
Yes.
Of course, you shouldn't take sugar.
I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and they were telling me that, oh, I don't need sugar, that's why I'm gonna have some bacon and eggs. They told me.
Right.
I was like, what? That's the wrong thing to do.
Yes.
You're gonna make he was a pre-diabetic, and he's gonna run into diabetes if he continues doing that.
Yeah, so it's actually a misconception that needs to be corrected. Okay, let's go to our audience now. Please go on. Do you have a question?
My name is Peter Wango. I have a question. There is this notion that, my grandfather used to take a lot of sugar and he lived to 90 plus years and he was okay. He never had to visit the hospital.
Yeah.
So if I put sugar in my tea, sugar in my porridge, am I safe with diabetes? Am I increasing my risk for diabetes?
That's a really good question. We're actually going to have another session. We'll be dealing more with detail about that, but let me just answer you briefly. He lived to 99 in spite of the sugar. It was not the sugar what made him live longer. I can assure you of that. So also in the old days, your grandfather most probably did much more physical type of activity than we do today. In the old days, we didn't have computers. People spend, their whole day sitting down in front of a computer, typing on that keyboard. I can tell you that's not too many calories that you're burning, So, having to, work the ground and, with the hoe and so forth, man, that really burns a lot of calories. And that's why, most probably because of his activity, he had a bigger need for more calories. And that's why the sugar that he was eating, it's actually a small amount compared to all the calories that he was consuming. So that doesn't give, permission. I've seen people that have reached their 90s smoking. So should I then recommend everybody to go smoking? No, isn't it? They're living in spite of the smoking. They got to 90, but that doesn't mean that was their secret of longevity. So yeah, be careful, with what we call in research the confounding variables.
Yes. Thank you for that. That's a good question. Let's have our next question.
Right, thank you. My name is Newton. In the effect that a patient suffers from diabetes, like other diseases, say HIV, I think, I could be wrong, and correct me if I am, there could be the risk of having opportunistic diseases if one has diabetes. What are some of these diseases that may come up after one is diagnosed?
Yeah, that's actually very, very, very true. And the reason why has to do with your immunity. So I have a friend of mine that I do research together with him, and he published a very interesting paper. He started giving different amounts of sugar to healthy students, and then he took a sample after they ate the sugar, and then he put bacteria, and he put their cells of the immune system, and then he counted how efficient are those cells at destroying those bacteria. And the relationship was very clear. The more sugar that you eat, the less efficient your immune system is at destroying this bacteria. Why am I telling you this story? Because it's the same story with somebody diabetic. See, a diabetic that is not well under control and their sugars are, 150, 200, 300, and so forth, the higher the blood sugar, the same thing happens with their immune system. Their immune system has a hard time destroying those bacteria, therefore opening the door to all kinds of possible infections. And those are those opportunistic infections that you were talking about. It's not just one specific, but the problem is that any of the pathogens can do a big problem, from your E. coli to your Listeria to your Campylobacter, and there's a lot of different bacteria that somebody that was healthy, you didn't wash your hands correctly and you ate something, it's not that big of a deal. Your immune system takes care of it. But somebody that is, has less ability to attack those bacteria, it's very easy for those bacteria to take over, and then they are in big trouble. And not only the bacteria, what it worries us is the circulation starts to be impaired because the sugar gets stuck to the arteries, and then the person, it's easy for them to have a little cut, but because there's not very good immune system to help with the healing, that little cut can complicate, and then they end up cutting the limb, and you can get yourself in a really big trouble.
So no excuse, actually. Very interesting. Thank you for that. Let's have our last question. Please go on.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm James Omoyo. I've got two questions. My first question is there a benefit if someone will stay on the sun more when they have diabetes? And
Okay.
my second question is are men more predisposed to diabetes when they are old? Because that's something like that.
Good question. Good question. So the first question, is there a possibility of decreasing blood sugar by staying in the sunlight? Not necessarily. What's going to decrease glucose is going to be exercise, and that's why somebody that is diabetic, they need to increase their level of exercise, because their muscles are what really decreases glucose. And think about it, if you're just sitting down, when the sugar is passing by those muscles, the muscles say, just give me a little bit and that's enough for me. But think about, like a marathon runner, they're running hard. What are those muscles saying?
Hey.
Gimme, 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 I need sugar, So that's what we need to do. We need to stimulate, those muscles to start really taking down that sugar that's going to help decrease that glucose in the body. And then the second question, males or females, who has higher risk of diabetes as they age? The reality is that males, because they have more muscle, that actually has a protective effect on them. Because your muscles are bigger, you're able to absorb much more that sugar, while females tend to have a higher amount of body fat and less muscle, okay? And that's why doing physical exercise on the female is actually very beneficial, because you stimulate the growth of those muscles, and then they're able to absorb much more. But the bad news for the male is that many times males tend to be a little bit more proud. And females, when there's something wrong, immediately they go to the hospital or the doctor to try to take care of it. While males many times neglect that. Not until the problem is very severe, then they come and show up to the doctor, and that's what we see, in the clinical practice. You see more severe disease among male than females, but that's because they took too long to seek the care that they needed. So be careful not to neglect that side of things, and make sure that you have that healthy lifestyle so that you can be, protected by this type of problems.
Thank you. It's true that men have a very poor health-seeking behavior. So I would like to encourage you at home, please, when you have a slight headache, it's okay to go to hospital. And it doesn't mean that you're lesser of a man.
Yes.
And I found actually, Dr. Eddie, that when you have community programs, it's easier for men to attend community programs and have their screening done there than in a hospital.
That's right.
I don't know if that's your experience.
Yeah, that's the reality, that's the reality. So that's why we need to do more community programs,
Yes.
so that we can, do that outreach and encourage males to take care of themselves.
Yes, because they hardly do this so much. We have come to the end of this part of our show today. We hope you have learned something about diabetes and the risks that what increases or what decreases these risks, and what we can do and where you can start. We'd like to teach you a few other lessons in our coming segments, practically, where you can apply this, and we're going to make a garbanzo stew. So we'd like to invite you, please grab your notebook, and now we're going to go into the kitchen to learn more about this. We're in the kitchen, and here today we're going to make one other type of cheese. Which type of cheese, Esther, are we making today?
Today we're gonna make our garbanzo cheese.
Garbanzo. The other name for garbanzo is chickpeas. We have this commonly in the market. What are some of the benefits?
Garbanzo is very good. It's a legume and it has a lot of benefits. It's high in fiber, so it's good to lower the blood sugar. It's gonna keep you, it's high in protein, so it's gonna keep you satisfied for a long time. Also, it has linoleic acid. There are minerals that are very good, like magnesium, especially zinc. It's good for the immune system. It has many minerals. But one of the things is that it's diuretic, so that's one of
Good for the diabetics.
benefits, and also very good for the brain.
Yes. If you want to be smarter and wiser, got to try this. So how much of this do we need?
So it's 1 cup, but it was pre-soaked for 8 hours. So you need to let it soak and then rinse and wash, and that's the final product.
Okay.
So it's soft now.
So guide me.
So yeah, we're gonna put it in the blender. But before you start doing that, I'm gonna start mixing this beautiful powder right here. It's called agar agar.
Agar agar.
Is
What
that
is
how
it?
you call it?
Yes, it's agar agar.
It's made out of algae. So it's like a gelatin. But the problem with gelatin, if we could make cheese with gelatin, but it is not plant-based. So this one is plant-based, and it's gonna make the cheese have that consistency, you know, like soft but hard. So it's not a creamy, but it's gonna be firm.
Okay. So it's the firm kind of a cheese.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So it's gonna be 2 cups of water for 2 tablespoons of agar. So if you use 1 cup of water, it's 1 tablespoon. So it's 1 to 1.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start mixing, and you have to keep mixing it.
So
Don't let it.
sit for long.
Don't let it sit. And then we're gonna blend everything else, and you're gonna add it to the pan.
Okay.
Okay. So in the blender, you can start
Yes.
blending the garbanzo.
How much water will I need for this?
So for the garbanzo, you're gonna use 2 cups. No, actually, yeah, just add 1. Let's see if 1 is enough, and then you're gonna add the seasonings.
Yes.
And the seasonings are nutritional yeast flakes. That's gonna give the cheesy flavor. It's rich in vitamins, especially vitamin B complex. That's good for the nervous system and for your muscles. So that's giving the cheesy flavor. And then 1 quarter of an onion. This one is actually half, but it was very small onion. So more or less that's the size of the onion.
So that goes in.
And then 1 or 2 cloves of garlic. I love garlic, so I'm using 2.
And these are fresh garlic.
Yes. And onion and garlic are very good for your immune system too.
Especially in this era of COVID.
Yes, we want to keep our immune system very strong.
Okay.
And then we're gonna add lemon. That's the use of 1 lemon. And then we're gonna add salt, 1 small teaspoon. And it's been measured.
Okay.
So, and then a little olive oil. And that's the only oil we're using. There are some cheeses that we make, plant-based cheeses that are made with cashews or with almonds. But I like this one because this one is high in protein and is low in fat.
Okay.
So we're gonna blend it. And I'm stirring, mixing this agar with the water.
Okay, so let me blend this. Good. Looks like it's ready.
All right.
Okay. I really like the smell of the nutritional yeast.
Yes.
So do I pour in here?
So we're gonna put it here, and we're gonna keep blending, and then it's gonna start thickening. I don't want to waste any.
Where, in what dishes do you use this cheese for in your country?
Well, you know, we eat that famous tortilla, so you can make it with tortillas in different types. But you can actually, it's just like eating cheese, so you can eat cheese with any. Do me a favor, why don't we add another teaspoon of agar?
To make it thicker?
Because it's 1 to 1, and I'm thinking we added 1 cup of water to the garbanzo.
Yes.
We want to make sure it's the 1 to 1 ratio. So we can just add it here, and we keep mixing. And it's getting thicker and thicker, so there you go. Beautiful.
And it has a nice creamy yellowish kind of color, which is really the cheesy color.
Yes.
You know, for many of the Kenyan dishes, one of the things we can do is to add this Mexican variety into our foods to just add some new flavor.
Yes.
And this is something we can all introduce, especially those of us watching at home.
Yes.
You can actually have this, and it's simple, it's easy. Children would like to have this.
Yes.
You know, even in your slices sandwich for school.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
yes.
It
You
would be a
can
nice
cut it.
option.
So you're going to mold it. You can make it round. You can make it square.
Yes.
We're going to use this dish. It's a square, so it's going to be a square cheese. And leave it overnight. It's going to be thicker. It's important that we lower our consumption of milk products because they're high in saturated fat.
True.
And nowadays, you know, people have a lot of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So if you lower the cholesterol, the saturated fat, you know, it's very good for your body. So,
And this is an easy way to actually do that without missing out on
and
the
it's
uniqueness
very delicious, yeah.
of enjoying your very nutritious dishes at home.
And you're adding the good minerals and vitamins from the garbanzo. So it's a good option, especially for students,
Yes.
because the choline is the one that's gonna make them see how it's getting thicker.
It looks like uji. Uji is porridge. We make it
uh-huh.
here locally, so
And it
it's
start getting
thick.
thicker?
Yes,
Okay.
and it's getting thicker.
Okay.
Yes. So how long would you stir this?
So this
Or how long would you do
about
this?
10 minutes. And then we're just gonna put it in the mold, in the
In our glass
container.
jar here?
Yeah. And then we're gonna let it sit, and it's gonna, once it cools down, it's gonna be nice and thick. So it's gonna get harder, but so nice and soft.
And how
So
long
it's
can
good.
you keep this after you've prepared?
Yeah, you can keep it in the refrigerator.
And it would keep for how long? A week? 2
Believe
days,
me,
1
it's
day?
gonna be gone less than a week. Your
Okay.
family is gonna finish it.
So there is no possibility of having it even go bad. Yeah.
If you want more like the American cheese flavor, you can add pimento, the
Yes.
red bell pepper. You
When
can
you're
add,
into the garbanzo.
yes,
When you're
just blend
blending.
it together, and it's
Yes.
gonna give that 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 red flavor.
Actually, then that's another option. One time you can try with the bell pepper, the capsicum, and another time you can just do without.
Right.
Wow.
See which one you like better.
Yes.
So I would like to pour this here. I need something to hold it.
Okay, let me get
Maybe
for
this
you
towel?
something. Yes, let me give it to you.
So important thing is that we keep mixing because we don't want any crumbles, and it's getting thicker and thicker.
Yep. So you can use this to remove
So
your
10 to
hot
15.
part.
So I'm gonna pour it in there. Okay. Put this away.
Good.
I think it should be enough. So we're just gonna pour it. Careful. Beautiful. So that's our cheese. So it has to stay right now. It's still soft,
Hot, yes.
but it's actually gonna get hotter overnight. So what I do is I let it cool down, and then you can put it in the refrigerator, and it's gonna get firm.
And then
by
you're
the
able
morning,
to do your
and then you make
slices.
slices the way you want.
You see, we can actually have healthy dishes. You know, cheese does not have to be the regular cheese that you're used to. You can have a plant-based option. And we have just done one. We've even introduced a flavor to it. You can add the red capsicum, as we commonly call it here. Thank you, Esther, for introducing
welcome.
us to cheese, Mexican foods. Indeed, we are going to add more value and more color to the Kenyan dishes. And this is a way that you all want to be part of it. You want this recipe? You want to know exact the measurements? Check them out in our recipes. All of them where we have stored in our website, www.lisheleo.com. Download the recipe and share it with other people. Invite them to try this meal. And all our work that we have done, all the production, the previous episodes can all be found on our Hope Channel YouTube channel. Thank you so much for always being here. Thank you, Esther,
You're
for
welcome.
gracing our kitchen, and we are really, really so thankful to have you this season. Thank you for now, and goodbye from us.